While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. I am not fit for this office and should have never been here. Well, that doesn't sound very promising. That's not some historian or a critic judging Warren Harding. That's Warren Harding himself, President of the United States, admitting that he wasn't really cut out for his job. And today, on Presidents Unplugged, we're diving into the life of America's 29th president. The man who stumbled into power, doubted himself the whole entire way through, and left behind a presidency remembered as a detour and a disappointment in American history. Let's begin. Harding was born in 1865 in Marion, Ohio. Small-town life was who he was. He played in the town band, ran a local newspaper, and hung out with his buddies and played poker. I mean, nothing about him screamed, "This guy is our future president," just some guy from a small town. If anything at all, he looked like a guy you'd see leading like some form of parade, not leading the nation. And Harding had no aspirations for even anything close to politics, until somebody came along that would change his life forever. For the best, I don't really know. I'll let you judge. Florence Kling Harding, what a name, was ambitious, smart, and saw something in Harding that he didn't even see it himself. She saw potential. When they got married, she pushed him into politics and convinced him that he had what it took and basically launched his career for him. She made a lot of his decisions that he probably should have made himself. Harding wasn't even the main, driving force. Florence was. So, from the beginning, his journey to politics was weird. He didn't want power. He didn't chase power. Power kind of chased him in the form of his wife forcing it to happen. But he wasn't just immediately going to become the president. He started serving as an Ohio state senator, and then he went up to a lieutenant governor, and eventually he became a U.S. senator for Ohio. And here's the thing, people really liked him. Even though he didn't really believe in himself in a lot of scenarios, people really believed and liked him as a person. Harding was a handsome, tall, broad-shouldered guy. He looked like a president. He had a deep, commanding voice that sounded great in speeches. Did he understand complicated policies that you probably need to be the president? No, not at all. Harding admitted a lot of the time that he wasn't really much of a thinker. And as an American, we kind of want thinkers, good, deep thinkers as our president. So him admitting this, wasn't very smart. But the man had presence. He had charm. And sometimes that's all that people wanted. By 1920, and Americans were tired of drama, bombs, and just overwhelming war. Woodrow Wilson had promised to change the world, and let's just make this clear. He did change the world. He changed the world by getting us into a war where a ton of us died and evil things were being done. All this evil. Warren Harding's plan began with a word that doesn't even exist. Warren Harding's campaign promise was return to normalcy. Now, back in the day, this wasn't even a word at all. Like, if you asked Merriam-Webster, normalcy was not a word. But after Harding used it in his campaign, he made it one. But the fact that it was a word or not didn't matter. Warren Harding didn't just win this election by a little margin. He won in a landslide. This campaign worked wonders. Warren Harding, a man who didn't even want to be the president, became the president in one of the biggest electoral landslides in history. Now, you're going to see the title of this episode, Why Am I Here? You're going to hear all the stuff I say about him, but I got to make something clear. Like most bad presidents in American history, Harding wasn't all bad. In some areas even, he actually did pretty well. Economically, the country was booming. They're called the Roaring Twenties for a reason. The economy was revving up, and Harding supported the policies that encouraged businesses to grow. He pushed for reduced government spending, he lowered the taxes, and even created the Bureau of the Budget, which helped organize federal finances, also known as big government spending. So Harding did make some decisions that would, in turn, make the country better, especially after World War I. Letting businesses grow and prosper is very important to our country's economy, and it showed with how strong the economy was for basically the entire 20s from the beginning of Harding's presidency. For many Americans, life was good. Life was fun. Life was roaring. And every time I think of Warren Harding's presidency, I think of the movie and the book, I guess, The Great Gatsby. Thanks to my 9th grade English teacher, I actually read that book and watched the movie. And that's pretty much the encapsulation of Warren Harding's presidency. Partying, illegal drinking, fun, right? That's all great. Wait, why is our president drinking and doing things illegal? Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Warren Harding had something that is going to be mentioned a lot later in this episode. Harding partied in the White House a lot. Now, nothing is wrong with a party. Let me just make that clear. Trump, Washington, Biden, whoever you're talking about, probably has a lot of parties in the White House. But Prohibition, a time where alcohol was illegal, our president, I don't know, the man over the law in our country, should not be drinking illegal alcohol in the White House gambling with his friends. We're going to go into more about that later, but just know that Warren Harding having these parties was a big reason that he was not very likable. Dude was doing illegal stuff, and he was the president. It doesn't make much sense at all. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. A big influence and a big reason that Harding made these bad decisions, especially with his parties in the White House, were because of the people that he surrounded himself with. These guys were not just goody two-shoes. They were shady, greedy, and they didn't see political office as a way to change the world for the better. They just saw it as a way to make money. Harding himself admitted multiple times that it's not his enemies he worried about. It was his closest friends. And he was absolutely right. Going off of all of this, the most infamous scandal of Harding's presidency was something called the Teapot Dome scandal. Without diving too deep into the weeds, because on Presidents Unplugged here, we have a time crunch, presidents often transfer and sell oil to big companies, big trustworthy companies, okay? That makes sense, right? They're big, they're trusting, okay? Warren Harding and all the people around him sold oil to these private, small companies all around the United States for bribes. Money. Money is the root of all evil. For a couple of extra dollars in their pocket, the United States basically threw oil at people who we didn't even know what they were going to do with it. And just a little note, that's not a good thing. And granted, Warren Harding was not in control of every single one of these decisions, but the people who were making these decisions were all around him. And that's why he's to blame. Because these friends around him, this small group of people that he had hired for good things, good purposes, were illegally drinking, making deals that were extremely shady. They were playing poker games in the White House, bootlegging liquor that was, let me just say it for the 19th time, illegal. You get the picture. Harding's administration was friends gone wild, and Harding couldn't even control them. And if he can't control his own cabinet, how in the world is he going to control the entire nation? Well, he wasn't. Remember, Harding didn't want this job in the first place. He admitted many times that he wasn't strong enough to even control the men around him. And that's really what doomed his presidency. By 1923, still early in his presidency, not even halfway through, scandals were starting to surface to the American people. Harding was a stressed, exhausted, and a worried man. And while he was on a tour of the western states, kind of like a vacation for him, but to connect with the American people and get back with them. Okay, that sounds good. Harding was in the middle of working when he suddenly collapsed. Oh my gosh, is he going to be okay? No. He died in San Francisco at just 57 years old. What? This dude just died like that? That's his whole story? His death shocked the country. Nobody expected it. Millions mourned. And for a moment, Harding was remembered warmly as that likable, down-to-earth president. But here's the problem. The more people figure out about you can be a great thing or a bad thing. For Harding, it was a terrible, awful thing. After he died, scandals unraveled, including the illegal drinking, the gambling, all this stuff that happened in the White House, and his reputation collapsed. Historians today, and me, will admit to you pretty openly that he was one of our worst American presidents ever. And with all this data, with all this illegal stuff that was happening, with very little positives, what in the world are we supposed to do with Warren Harding? How are we supposed to view him? On the one hand, he wasn't a monster. Mostly because he wasn't corrupt himself. It's just the people around him were corrupt. And through all his friends' corruption, he was careless. He cared about people, he cared about the country, and he wanted Americans to feel at peace. But it's just a reminder to us as Americans when we hear his stories today, how something happens when somebody who doesn't want a job gets the job. He didn't have the drive. He didn't have the skill. He didn't have the toughness to stand up for corruption that was right in front of him. And he knew it more than anybody else. Now, some people, when they're not in a great position and they're not doing very well, won't admit it. They'll just keep quiet and just assume nobody will notice. But remember, this guy said these words, "I am not fit for this office and should have never been here." And in the end, Harding's story is less about what he did and more about what he didn't do. He didn't rise to the occasion of the presidency. He didn't control his friends when they were corrupt around him. And he didn't believe he belonged there in the first place. Warren Harding, the president who never wanted to be president. This story is so funny to read today because it reminds you that history isn't always sunshine and rainbows and amazing figures. Like, sometimes history gives us larger-than-life figures like Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, all these great, impactful, never-forgotten historical figures, and then it gives you a Warren Harding. Harding is just downright proof that looking the part doesn't always mean you need to play the part. And that is what makes Warren Harding so interesting. Tune in next Friday as we talk about spooky presidential assassination attempts. I'm going to try not to do that voice again. October is a very special, eventful month for Presidents Unplugged. I will be talking each week about a new presidential assassination from American history. Now, I know this question is probably coming from your Aunt Sally. But Ty, there's 5 weeks in October, and only 4 presidents have been assassinated. What are you going to do? Thanks, Aunt Sally. On the first week, next week, on Presidents Unplugged, we're going to be talking about some of the most important assassination attempts. Things that made America say, whew, we dodged a bullet, even though some of the bullets actually hit them. These moments, although they didn't end the president's lives, are very important, and we should definitely know about them. But for the 4 weeks coming up after that, to fulfill this scary month, I will be talking about all 4 of the men who actually were assassinated in the presidential office. And let me just say, you are not going to want to miss it. And I will see you soon on Presidents Unplugged. I'm Ty Svenson, and I'll see you in the spooky season. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.